this is always like a good point to begin to sort of explain what I'm doing, because this festival, I feel, is like completely an example of chaos and many different pagan symbols happening, and it's just like the first time where I really got entranced by sound, performance, costumes, clothing, and just like this like couture that meant a lot to the people who were wearing it. All of these costumes that you see take like, you know, these people save money over a whole period of a year, and they're working on their costumes all year long to reveal it in this week-long festival that starts in one city and then goes to the next and goes throughout like the Andes and different parts of Bolivia. And yeah, you know, there's different groups, there's like different gangs that represent like the story of like the indigenous and pre-colonial times, and it's just like really a tradition that's been, you know, going on for a long time in Bolivia and also with my family. And so to me, this is where I learned about music and fashion, or, you know, performance and just like relationships, because during this festival people will just kind of take care of each other. Like families will bring their kids, and then like I was taking care of, like I was part of like little gangs of kids who would just like hang out, and we didn't know each other, but eventually someone would take care of us and feed us. So, but yeah, and then everyone's like kind of partying together. So, but yeah, it's just beyond, it's like beautiful just to look at and to be a part of. So, but so yeah, this is just an example of that. And so I feel like this is like the core influence of a lot of what I do. I'm gonna take you through a couple years of previous works, and yeah, I'm gonna jump around, but if you have any questions, we can talk afterwards at the Q&A. So this is a video I made in 2009. It's called Dressing the Queen. This is my friend and I. I was just sort of layering all these pieces of clothing, what I felt like was making like this like a painting, like a icon, like an iconography, but that was constantly shifting. So in this piece, I felt like this was a painting, so we just kept layering and layering, and eventually she gets undressed, but it was just for me like an urgency to make this image, also based on like an ikeko, which is like a statue that Bolivians every spring, you would get a little statue and then layer it and bind it with all of the objects that you would hope to get that year, like cigarettes, money, a car, but they're usually men, and they're usually like the head of the family. It's representing like the male head of the family. So this was my version of that. Here's what let me see. So yeah, this is Evo Morales, who's he's the president of Bolivia, and he looks just like my dad, so he's kind of been in my work for a while. He is holding up an ikeko, which is the statue I was telling you about. Yeah, that's usually, I like the idea of binding and these objects on the body, like everything that you have and that you need are on your body at all times. So for many years I was moving around and pretty nomadic, so all I would use to make my work were my clothes. So I started to, just make sculptures, and I'm just kind of going to take you through how the sculptures are and how this became. So in the beginning, I was really taking everything I owned, and the clothing that I would choose to wear, everything was sort of like a swatch of color that I would make these images with. And so it started to be about carrying everything that you have with you, and then it started to sort of unveil and become more about what was underneath. And so this is an example of an ekeko I made. And that time I didn't have a studio, or I studied painting and I was making music, but I wasn't really doing either of anything like that. I was just sort of making these temporary private performances and documenting them. And this is 2011, where I got a grant to go to anywhere and make a series of works. And I went to all these cities that were named after my last name, Huanca. Most of them were in Peru, like pre-Andes. They were like in Huancavelica, Huancayo, and some spots in Bolivia, but it was mostly in Peru. And I was just buying materials from the area and making these images where I would sort of blend into the landscape. And here, this was Lake Titicaca, which is the highest lake in the world. And I'm bound in front of this woman here, you can't see me, but I'm in the image. And here I'm in this hole. This is me in a piece of fabric. So in 2012, I wanted to make my own natural history museum using different symbols and pieces from Bolivian mythology, or Andean mythology. So this is Pachamama, which is Mother Earth. And I created these stages with objects that were relating to the Urcupiña festival and the silver mines. And so this is these pair of dancing shoes. And this is a quipu, which is a 3D, a sculptural recording device. That's, I think Vienna has a lot of these actually. And this is a silver mining bag. So all of these objects had voices. I made sound for each of them, and they would, their sound would be playing from different corners of the room. So it was in 2012, I decided to take some of the pieces that I've been wearing and put them, give them their own stages. So this was in here I wanted to make make them each a character in this language that I would use for the next couple years. So this is a skirt, this is one of my shirts, some shorts I would wear, and a little ballet dress. And then from these 4 pieces, I went on for 2 years to make sculptures with the same materials. So here you see the skirt and the shirt, and this is a shirt. But with these works, performance has always been a part of the works, and sort of activated by having the body within, and sort of I wanted somehow for the sculptures to be deader than the body, so sort of the body being the alive part and the sculptures being what you would sort of imagine walking and living. So this is also a display of the materials. my clothing sort of transformed. So I feel like all of these sculptural works and the performances came from these beginning pieces. This was 2014. So none of the materials I would have would ever sort of be finished. Everything would continue. And so these cycles are sort of what, what's like a continuation of the bodies that lived within. So, and then I started to sort of reduce them and then take the clothing off of the body and then sort of put it on a canvas. So, and this is where the body rubbing started, to sort of like make a painting that wasn't permanent, because most of these works weren't permanent anyway. And then when I've always been excited about making paintings, but I was never able to really start from nothing, with the earlier works too, everything had to have a story or be sort of like a sense of a collage. So when I paint on the body, I always thought this is like such a fantastic opportunity to not really have any commitment to what the painting would look like. So the improvisation aspect is always like the most exciting side. So I started just painting my friends within the performances, and from these paintings sort of scanning the body and finding what were like the most successful paintings on them, and then using like their natural curves and encodings within like the folds of the body, and then making paintings from this. So this is when I started making these paintings that you see in the show as the background of what's underneath those paintings are these big prints of details of the body. So I always talk about the body paintings being like the original painting, because that's where there's really like a form of chaos and improvisation that I think are really, really can make something original. So I let the girls sort of create the performances on their own. Like all I ask of them is just to be anything but dramatic, because I feel like the works have so much drama in them that the body doesn't need to do that. So in this show, I really pared it down and gave them like a few objects to play with, and had some of the body prints in the background that weren't painted, and give them a piece of glass so that they can sort of make their own language within this space over 3 hours. So I've always used a lot of latex, leather, transparent materials that were all, materials that are found that kind of mimic skin. So this is the cover of the book, which is, from this image in 2015. So within this, there was like original paintings made live, which is pretty exciting for me, because when I see the performances, there are also things that I don't really expect happen, and it's what I like about it, because it's, I'm also watching this piece unveil like you are, so we're both having the same new experience. And from this, I've also started stepping and using my body to make sculptures, and these are small. They're like all made with like carving and scratching on clay. And so then in 2016 was the first time I started to really paint on the prints and sort of let the painting on top of it become the performance, like that I do alone in the studio. Okay, so this is the show that you just saw, or not sure.
Yeah, Donna, you have prepared another walk through the show in images. I guess most of you have seen the show, but we have these beautiful pictures here from the night of the opening, when we had 16 models, and yeah, you really had the full picture in all of the galleries. Maybe I start just telling you how I found your work, Donna, and how the two of us got together, and the initial idea why Donna Huanca here at the Lower Belvedere. So the project actually doesn't have a long history. It was not developed over years and years. We had only a year. It was only in the spring, or in June precisely, of 2017, when I was at Art Basel, and you know how this is in art fairs, everything, everybody's busy, everything is too much, and then I get into this space in Unlimited, the space by Paris Projects, and here I want to thank you, Javier, for the collaboration. And it is, and now I'm quoting you when you were talking about your vision for our show, it is if I had landed on another planet. I'm in another time, in another space. I'm completely out of this art business world. And it was a piece by Donna. And very soon there came up this idea that here we have the chance to work with this wonderful, this fantastic site here, the Belvedere, world cultural heritage, this jewel of the Baroque era. And as you know, the Baroque has been an era of a Gesamtkunstwerk. I think this term works in English too. I would not even know the correct translation. Ein
Total artwork? Like a complete artwork.
Mm-hmm, complete artwork, addressing all senses. And this is what Donna does in her work. It's all integrated. It's working with so many different media. And I don't think I know another artist who works at the same time with performance, with sculpture, with painting, with video, with smell, with sound. Donna is also a musician in her own right. Like everything, and bringing this into these spaces. So I'm finding out your email address, and I'm sending you this email in the summer of 17, presenting my idea.
Yeah, I went pretty fast. I like to say that it's really an honor for me to be here in Vienna and to do this, because the actionists, I feel like, were big influence too. I mean, in art history, I was really kind of not finding something that I could relate to. But for me, the Gemunste work of the Urcupiña festival, like the video I was showing is a similar experience where there's like sound, smell, food, just like a complete, overwhelming of the senses is what I've always wanted to create. And in this show, I had an opportunity to really push it. And when I first saw this space, I was very thrilled. I mean, for most artists, I think working in contemporary terms requires a very specific type of, white box experience. And I was just so excited to have the Baroque aspect to challenge me. I didn't really find it a challenge. I was really excited to sort of not compete with it, but sort of blend in, because it's such an extreme difference that I feel like there was a harmony between the two works. Like, and in the work, in this show, I really wanted to sort of take you through a transformative experience from, and you read the text and it seems pretty vague, from going from light to dark. But in all my work, I try to sort of give you like a sense of time and a sense of like change and evolution. And yeah, in this first room, for example, we completely transformed. We've used the most light that the museum has ever used, right? Like
yes, we start. The entire light system was changed to get this really bright white light.
Yeah, I felt it was important to sort of encounter, because the way that the architecture is, it's just you can only enter and exit through the same space. So it's important to sort of give you an introduction that sort of slaps you in the face, so that sort of you are born into something new, and that required a lot of blinding lights. I asked them just to make it blind, to make people blind, and so we tried the best we could, and I think we were very successful. Also, the whole palette of this front room is about like naivety or youth, and sort of like creating something that is very friendly in a way, or at least for me, something that's very welcoming, because the more that you enter the show, the harder things get. So this is as friendly as it can get, I think. And of course the sound in the opening was very loud, and it can be kind of intense. And with the sound, I'm working with like sampling metals and different like vibrational sounds that help the models keep time and meditation, because that's essentially what I'm asking the models to do, is to spend 3 hours at a time on this stage. And there's a piece of plexiglass that they're painting on, that in these first images you can't see, but here's an image of a painting made with latex, and I like this idea of layering. So in this piece, the models are free to make their own paintings and then deconstruct them live. And again, like there's no commitment, similar to like the painting on the body that's dissolvable and temporary. Here, it's made live and then taken apart.
When we were there in this first room, I was pointing out how you bring painting into three-dimensional space, and how over time the painting in the space unfolds and gets reduced again with this liquid latex that the models use. They started out with a transparent, with a clean plexiglass wall, and now these layers get added, but they will also pull them off, so it's back and forth movement.
Yeah, and obviously as the performance continues, the models' clay or any paint that they're working with disintegrates. So I wanted them, to be paintings that change as well. This idea of being temporary is like a very core kind of idea that I always come back to with all of these works. The thing that is permanent here is, I guess, the painting, but these sculptures and everything is like mimicking itself. So to create a work that sort of echoes itself, that's really what I'm trying to do. But yeah, like I wanted the sculptures to look like the models to look like the paintings to look like themselves. So it just creates this like sort of self-generating work. And
We should probably mention that all the work, the entire exhibition, everything has been conceived and realized for this project, for this exhibition. So, and maybe you want to talk a little bit more about how the painting, the video. Is the video in the back? Yes. And the sculptures, how all this comes together, or how it's developed together and is interdependent from each other.
Yes, the videos were like an important aspect so that the viewer, like the audience, can sort of zoom in and have like a private moment with the body, like, because obviously when you're in this space, there's, you know, a lot of issues with the models. You can't, obviously you have to respect space, and I don't think that you see what I see when I'm making them, obviously. So this video was put there so that you can actually look closely and like zoom in on the image of the body, where it becomes distracted and distorted like the paintings. So in a way I see them as paintings, but that a person is being painted live, and so you're witnessing, they're 15 minutes each, but in those 15 minutes you'll see, you know, like a different shifting image, similar to the first video I showed you. The idea of sort of, I don't really consider them videos because they're really just on a tripod, and just, you know, the only thing that the camera is doing is having like a non-objective gaze and sort of shifting like focus, but what is constantly changing is the image of the body. So that's what that is. And the sculptures, they're set there to sort of kind of remind you of, like, I wanted to be like Stations of the Cross, or like kind of have like these religious icons that are shelters for the models. That sort of, this one is like a mother base, so she's sort of there to shelter the models and make them, all the sculptures, all the works are supposed to be like kind of safety devices for the models. They're made for them. So in this one, it's being, I made this one specifically for Alicia Crampton, who's an amazing artist that I work with, and she's also Bolivian. So we have a kind of an ongoing dialogue about like genetic memory and sort of making works based off of our experiences with being American but being from the same place. So yeah, she asked me to make like a jaguar home, and so down here, I don't know if you see it, but on the lower half of the sculpture, there's like a jaguar with teeth, and the rest of the drawings are sort of based off of her.
I've been mentioning it before, but I always think of a Madonna. A Madonna statue, it's in German, the Schutzmantel Madonna. Yeah, es ist a sheltering Madonna.
Yeah, it's a very humble shelter that's made of lead, and I think in that room specifically, it really gives it a whole nother meaning to be in this, like, to look up and to see this like magnificent painting, and then to encounter this, like, you know, this humble material. It's all made out of lead, very toxic material that I like to use because it's very fragile and very toxic, and so I like to call it like a masculine material. But in here, there's a sound piece in the marble hall, which when I encountered this room, I was just like overwhelmed. I mean, it's meant to sort of like be a jaw-dropping experience to enter this room full of like this regalia and all of this, you know, all of this trophies and slaves, and just kind of like, it seemed like to be very like heavy with the ego. And so I wanted to create sort of a piece that would bring it down to earth and be very humble, like a language lesson. And so in the speakers, in the four corners, it's my father teaching my mother the 10 Commandments in Quechua. which is his native language. So they're kind of, the sound is bouncing from each corner of the room, and also there's sounds of me smoking, and like there's wind. So if you spend time there, I believe the piece is 20 minutes, and you can sort of hear that in the north, my father's always in one speaker and my mother's in the south, so they're always kind of like surrounding you, and opposite sides of the room.
And I have been asked what are the words, and I had to admit that I never asked. So
yeah, it's like it's similar to like the 10 Commandments. It's not religious, but it's more like don't steal, don't lie, don't don't beg, like these kind of like very like simple ideas of how to live your life, and yeah, again, this is one of like the sculptures that have some old clothing of mine and are just meant to be shelters for the models. So when they're performing, they have a space. And this room was really exciting because it was, Stella asked me to work with the collection of the Belvedere and if I would be interested. And the first thing I wanted was to just have a gang of women in the room, and sort of contrast them with them being white and then my girls being kind of these, eclectic collage of colors. So originally my idea was to have 20 of them, but we couldn't find that many actually in the collection. But it was interesting to sort of gather these historical sculptures depicting women sort of like in these positions of like fragile states, sort of like doing something delicate, obviously, sort of looking like very looking into themselves, but like in a shy way. And so I wanted to gather them and have them in a circle and sort of reverse the gaze and have them looking at each other instead of being looked at. So they're having their own conversation now. And amongst the walls and the exterior, this painting that began at the first day of the show, where all the models have contributed their wall rubbings. So if this is the first time you're seeing the show, the painting now is completely different than how it was the first day. And I really love this simple idea of leaving a mark and also like having sort of really scarring this space permanently, because normally in a museum like this you would never touch anything, and most people walk around with their hands behind their back, and there's like this etiquette to sort of like behave in a museum. And I thought it was like it's something that I never grew up with because my family never took me to museums. So like for me it's like I started coming to museums when I went to high school in art class, so I just didn't know the etiquette, and I thought that this was like a callback on that time where I just like didn't know how to behave in a museum. So having the girls all contribute to this painting, I think, is really significant because it's something that, even though it's painted over, it will be permanent and it will never leave the space. So I feel like that's like a very old way of being human, is trying to like scar, trying to mark make in some way. And so I really love this piece because it really gives the models agency to really leave their mark, and how and when they move is really up to them. And that's kind of goes for all the choreography in the show. We have like specific times where we perform in the space, but sort of it's all based on improvisation. So there's a lot left to chance, and I think that's what makes it exciting both for me and for the models and for the audience as well. And in this one spot, I wanted to just have one one color and the model contribute to that piece. Yeah, and then we get to the end, which is, you know, you started in the beginning like in a very light, sort of happy place, and then you get to the darkness, which, you know, I feel like I thought about it in a lot of different ways, and light to dark, joy to pain, how to really, you know, transcribe like a space of darkness and wisdom, and what happens when you reach a certain point. And I wanted to create this smell in the space that really would bring you to another level, like a smell of moisture, dampness, wood, burning wood. The sounds are all like Amazon sounds and rainforests, and I'm singing in some of it, sampling some other sort of lullaby type sounds that are supposed to lure you to sleep. But for me, this is like the room of death, sort of. It's not like a sad death, but it's kind of like the end. And yeah, the colors and everything in these paintings are like this landscape that you're creating, that we've created to sort of engulf you into like a swamp, basically. But yeah, and in this room, it's sort of like a disorientation, and it's really nice to spend some time here also, because in this image you see a lot of light, but when you're there, you know, it's like a completely different experience. And I think the scent was really important to sort of give you something that you can't really record online, that it's something that you really have to be there to experience and not really know what it is, but yeah. So that's it. That's the end of it. Yeah.
So thank you for this walk through the exhibition, this virtual walk, Donna. Maybe coming to this beautiful book now that you've worked for very closely with Alex Nussbaumer. You have mentioned very briefly in your talk your relation to Vienna actionism, and since this is also an important part of the background of doing this project, and there is one essay on this subject in the catalog by Anna Petrovic. I would want to ask you to get back to it for a moment and tell us about this relation and how you came about to hear about Vienna actionism.
Well, like 2005, I was working in a museum in Texas, in Houston, Texas, where my family moved when I was 15, and sort of bored with, I was going to art school, but nothing was really exciting. But then we had a private museum, so my boss had a relationship with Herman Nietzsche, and he brought him to do a big exhibition of 52 paintings and 18 videos in Texas and Houston, which I don't know if anybody knows what this is. It's like basically a corporate town in Texas that is just McDonald's and, you know, nothingness, no culture. So for me, it was...
the Rothko Chapel.
Yeah, excuse me, like there's the Menil collection, Rothko Chapel. But it's like very bipolar, like it's very extreme. Either there's like a very world-class collection or there's Walmart, you know? So it's very difficult to sort of, you know, find the beauty in that if you're looking to find something that's shocking, you know? And of course, this Herman Nietzsche show, I had to live with it for 3 months. I was a docent and sound curator in this space. And so I just was taken aback by this. We didn't host a performance, but we hosted these videos which I have to say definitely that experience has been hugely influential to my work. I worked with him closely, and actually I'll be giving a talk with him next month in a few weeks at the Nietzsche Foundation on December 18th. But yeah, this, for me, you know, living with this work was like a delight, like a pleasure, because although there wasn't any live element, you really felt how the paintings were jumping out of the wall to you, and also having the videos, yeah, it was really incredible. And then of course I looked into more of the actionists, and I was a bit disappointed that Valley Export was like the only woman that was represented in this group, you know, mostly being male, and I know there's a lot of problems within that, but I have to say working with him was great, and I felt nothing but respect from him, and likewise I obviously, you know, really appreciated his just literally living with someone's work, and I didn't know art can do that, so that was really exciting.
I mean, today there are more women's contribution to actionism is recognized. Like we did this Günter Bruce show in the beginning of the year, and we definitely pointed out his wife's part and his contribution to his work, Anna Bruce. Okay, since we have 10 more minutes, we should open up the conversation to the floor. Yeah, questions, please.
Could you please be so kind and tell us how you make all these scenes on the floor, or horizontally or vertically?
The paintings?
Yes. And the material used, and were they made here on site or brought from your...
Did I bring
where
them?
do you have your study?
So the paintings are made all with my
Locally?
hands. Sorry?
Were they made here?
No, nothing was here. Everything was in Berlin. I have my studio in Berlin.
Oh, I see.
And I actually had to get a bigger studio for this show, just to make this show.
Can you imagine?
My ceilings are 4 meters high, but I wanted to make the paintings go to the 6 meters, but it wasn't possible for our space. But yeah, I work with my hands, and I work on the wall, and I flip them, and I have assistants that will help me flip them, but if I can, I like to just be alone working on them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in the back room, the series all have pigment, and in the front room, it's all like oils, but everything is sort of immediately made, similar to the way that I paint the body, which is very fast, you know, very intuitive.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I want to ask a question just about the performers and the relationship that you have with the performance and the audience. Because I really like in the text that you say you don't want the performers to entertain the audience. But I had an experience when I came to see the show about a month ago. I was asked to move rooms quite quickly because I wasn't meant to watch the performers for too long, because it wasn't meant to be a performance to watch. It was meant to be more of like a
Weird.
performance to be seen. So we were asked to move into a different room to like look at the sculptures as much as we were looking at the performance. So I was just interested if you have like a idea of how they should be seen, or like if that was, or if you're aware that that was what was being said to audience members.
I wasn't aware of that. That's not the intention. What I do, you know, security is a big part of the show. I really want the girls to feel safe. And, you know, these situations can never be really predicted, you know, so there's a few rules, and it's mostly about distance, and you know, photography was banned from the show really early on, because I wanted everybody to really have their experience with the show and not really just document it, which, you know, like our generation is obsessed with that, and so I really wanted to sort of change that vision. But no, I mean, I guess if maybe, I don't know what the situation was, but like there's a 2 meter distance that like anywhere from 1 to 2 meters is where you can get close, because in the beginning people were getting like, you know, it was just like getting out of hand. So especially in a museum like this, that's like the most visited museum in, you know, I think Europe, like it's 7 days a week. You know, there's so much audience that really is coming here to see the Kiss and not really a performance like this. So there's a very wide range of audience. So yeah, we just wanted the security. I specifically asked for only women security guards, so that they can feel like, you know, safe to sort of like tell some relationship. But yeah, it was a big consideration with the show. Yeah, yeah. No, I brought, everything was made for the show in my studio in Berlin, and completely never shown before. You know, like I was showing you earlier work, which now I realize was like super old, but like you see, like there's an element of, I wanted to create everything from the beginning. So even the book is an artwork. Like we worked on like the cover to sort of be like stained, and yeah, we worked with the designer to sort of make like the insides, like the body rubbing. So it's meant to be sort of stained as well, this book. Eventually, if you take the cover off, it's like, you know, very sensitive, like all of these works. Any other questions?
Yes, please. The models are painted every day. So at the beginning of the show, you were painting them. Do they have some rules? How do they paint them each self? Or is somebody there who paints them, or each other? Or
yeah, well, for many years, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Do you have, do you send them some suggestions for color, or
yeah.
Do they get some instructions, or how this works, please?
So with this show was the first time that I've started using a different technique, because every other show I've done, I'm the one who's painting them, and at the opening I'm like covered in paint, like a hot mess, like stressed, you know, because it's like a very difficult job. The body takes 3 hours each to be painted if I'm painting with a brush. So you know, at the opening, every single model who's in this show was here. 4 of them were from out of town, that are my core models, that are models I've worked with for 5 years, who sort of train the local models. And yeah, we had to develop a new system to create this painting. And so there's an instruction booklet where these paintings are repeated. And so they're paired up. So during this performance for the rest of the show, which is until January 6th, there's 2 models a day, and those 2 models get complementary paintings that are repeated. So everybody gets a chance to be a different character. There's 12 models here in Vienna, and at the opening there were 16. Different characters, there were 16 different paintings, yeah.
Now we still have 16 different moving paintings.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We blew it.
I mean, our accountant. No, but it's a good question actually in relation to other shows we do, because it's obvious, and many art institutions, museums, Kunstvereins for that matter, shy away from producing a performance-based exhibition because they expect the costs to be really high. But I mean, of course, as every museum, we have a limited budget, but we really could do it together, because in other exhibitions, you know what we show here at Belvedere usually, we have like 50 lenders, 150 objects, and they come from all over the world. We have the insurance and transfers. So, given all together, it's a regular budget.
Hi. I have a question about the use of the word model and not performer, in terms of model and what I've seen, because I've seen your work once before at the Julia
Stoshek?
Yes, thanks. Collection. And it's always kind of the same size of body. Is this something that is
the
like...
what? I'm sorry?
Shape of body.
Okay.
Is like, it's always kind of the same type of body. Is this something that is...
I would disagree. Like, there's a big range of color and size in my work. I think that there's not so much of that I'm thinking about when I work with people. It's more like who is willing to do this and who's really committed to really, meditating in public over 3 months. I mean, that's a very, that could be a huge, challenge for someone and experience. So I think, we do cast a lot, throw a huge net out to find the right people, and the people who end up working in the shows are the ones who are the most committed and most flexible, actually, because we don't want people who have this, like somebody who's really open. That's the kind of requirement. And but it's not necessarily a body size. Of course, like in Vienna, we were looking to be more diverse, but we are in Vienna, and I don't know but I really I really am trying to get like everyone's voice in, but it's a very exciting relationship, because we know each other. Like, the models tell me stuff about my work. Like, they describe their experiences in text. I ask them all to write text, and then they're published in the books occasionally. And for me, that's a very important point of view, to know what the models are thinking and how they feel and what they're going through during this time. Because, like I said, my works are supposed to be kind of protection for them, not really putting them on like that, like it being about this exchange. But the word model is used because I want to sort of create an idea of them being a part of the bigger work. So it's not like I feel like when you say performer, it's more about them and their performance, but they're just part of like a bigger cosmos. So it's not necessarily the correct word that I would, I like to use, but it's not like related to fashion in that model sense.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And in 60 minutes are over. Thank you. Thank you, Donna, first and foremost. Thank you for coming.
You.
And again, the catalog is very new. It's here at the shop, and we'll be over there with Donna. So if one of you wants to have it signed, he or she will get it, I guess. Thank you again. Good night.